My name is Sam. And this is a confession. A blueprint. A warning. This is how you take a perfectly rotten, toxic family and you burn it to the ground. Not with a match, not with a scream, but with silence. With patience. It all really started on my 30th birthday. The smell of my mom's cheap apple pie was filling the house. The same kind she bought every year from the supermarket bakery. Gideon, my older brother, he got homemade German chocolate cake. His favorite. But for me? It was always store-bought apple. I should have known. We were sitting around the table. The four of us. Mom, Dad, the golden child, and me. The ghost. I was listening to Dad talk about Gideon's latest venture, some pyramid scheme selling algae supplements or something. How he was a visionary. I was nodding, smiling my empty smile, waiting for it to be over. Then my father cleared his throat. That sound always meant a pronouncement was coming. Son, he said, looking right at me. Your mother and I have been thinking about our legacy. I almost laughed. Legacy? We lived in a 3-bedroom split level with a mortgage they'd just finished paying off. What legacy? We've decided, he continued, his voice taking on that pompous, boardroom tone he loved, that it's time to settle things. To make things clear. My mother was beaming, her hand on Gideon's arm. He was smirking. He knew what was coming. I could see it in his eyes. That smug, I've already won look he'd had since we were kids. We're signing the house over to Gideon, my father said. Just like that. As if he'd said, please pass the salt. The words didn't make sense. They just hung in the air between us, ugly and impossible. You're what? The question came out of me like a breath I'd been holding for 30 years. The house, my mother clarified, as if I were slow. It's only fair, Sam. Gideon, he needs the stability. This is his home. You're so independent. You have your own life. My own life. A 1-bedroom apartment. A mountain of student debt they'd never helped me with. A used car. That was my own life. The life I'd built despite them. And Gideon's life? A series of failed schemes, financed by them. He lived in their basement. He was 34 years old. And what about me? I asked. My voice was quiet. Dangerously quiet. My mother's smile was meant to be benevolent. It was the most vicious thing I'd ever seen. Oh, honey, of course we didn't forget you. She gestured to the dark, hulking shape in the hallway. We're leaving you the grandfather clock. You always loved that clock. The clock. A heavy, ugly, broken thing that had ticked away every silent meal, every ignored achievement, every moment of my neglect for my entire life. That was my share. My inheritance. A broken clock. And Gideon got the house. Don't miss the next twist, subscribe now. I looked at my brother. His smirk was a full-blown smile now. He'd won. He'd always win. In that moment, something in me didn't break. It crystallized. It turned to ice. The hurt, the pain, the 30 years of being second best, it all froze into a single, sharp, precise point of purpose. I didn't say a word. I stood up. I walked to the hallway. I placed my hand on the cold, wooden case of that stupid clock. I could feel the faint, irregular tremor of its broken mechanism. A heartbeat on life support. Then I turned and walked out. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't slam the door. I just left. I drove home in a silence so complete it was like being underwater. When I got to my apartment, I didn't break down. I didn't scream. I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and I started to type. I ended up on Reddit. A forum called r/pro-revenge. I'd read stories there before, little fantasies of justice. But that night, it wasn't a fantasy. It was a search for a weapon. My first post was simple. The title: My parents gave my deadbeat brother the family house and left me a broken clock. I need to break them. The comments poured in. Support. Ideas. Jokes. But one user, someone called Cold Comfort, wrote something that changed everything. The best revenge is structural. Don't get mad. Get forensic. They think they're a closed system? An inbred family where only their rules matter? Audit them. Everyone has secrets. Find their cracks. Then pour in acid. Audit them. I was an accountant. It was what I did. I found discrepancies. I found hidden numbers. I found the truth in the patterns people thought no one was watching. They'd spent my entire life teaching me to be quiet, to be invisible, to not make waves. They'd turned me into a ghost in my own home. It was time to become a ghost that could haunt. My revenge wouldn't be an explosion. It would be an audit. A long, meticulous, terrifyingly patient audit of their entire lives. And I would present my findings in a way they could never, ever ignore. This is the story of that audit. This is how I destroyed my toxic family, piece by piece. And it started not with a fight, but with a smile and a lie. I picked up my phone. I called my mother. I could hear the nervousness in her voice. She expected me to yell. Instead, I made my voice soft. Contrite. Mom? Hi. I'm sorry about how I acted. You're right. You and Dad are right. It's Gideon's home. It's the way it should be. The relief on the other end of the line was a physical thing. I could feel it. Oh, Sam. I knew you'd understand. You're such a good boy. The trap was set. They'd let the ghost back in. And this time, I was watching everything. My apology was my Trojan horse. They welcomed it right through the gates. The very next Sunday, I was back at the house for dinner. The air was different. Lighter, for them. They thought the crisis was over. They thought I'd accepted my place in their world order. The disappointing planet to Gideon's shining sun. I played my part. I ate the dry pot roast. I nodded as my dad held court on politics. I even offered to help with the dishes. This was my new job. My new project. My audit. My mother beamed. Oh, Sam, you don't have to do that. I want to, Mom, I said, layering on the guilt like a master chef. I feel like I've been so distant. I want to help. That's how I got access to the kitchen filing cabinet. The important documents drawer. While my mom was in the living room, gushing over Gideon's latest Instagram post, I was elbow deep in their financial lives. My phone was on the counter, camera app open. Click. The deed to the house. Click. Click. Their mortgage discharge papers. Click. My father's life insurance policy. I was a ghost, photographing the secrets of the living. My dad was next. A few days later, I got the call I knew was coming. Sam, this damn computer is so slow again. Can you come take a look? Sure thing, Dad. Be right over. His home office was a shrine to his own mediocre achievements. Plaques from his company. A photo of him shaking hands with some mid-level manager. He thought he was a titan of industry. He was a middleman in a cardboard box company. Don't miss the next twist, subscribe now. I sat in his leather chair. He stood over me, breathing his coffee breath down my neck. It's probably just got a lot of junk on it, he said, sounding knowledgeable. Probably, Dad. I'll run a cleanup. I clicked around, opening programs he'd never understand. While a defragmentation bar slid slowly across the screen, a perfect distraction, I installed a remote access program. I named it something boring. Systemmonitor.exe, I hid it deep in the system files. Now, from my apartment, I could see everything he did. Every spreadsheet, every email, every secret. He clapped me on the shoulder. That's my boy. Knew you were good for something. The insult was so casual, so baked into his DNA, he didn't even hear it. I just smiled. No problem, Dad. The final piece of my initial reconnaissance was Gideon. He was the easiest. His vanity was a wide-open door. I found him in the basement, which he'd converted into his executive suite. It smelled of cheap energy drinks and dirty laundry. Hey, man, I said, holding up a six-pack of the expensive beer he liked but never bought for himself. Felt like having a beer. Mom said you were down here. His eyes lit up. Free stuff. His favorite. Yeah, dude. Come in. Check out the operation. The operation was a messy desk with 2 monitors. On one, he was chatting on some forum. On the other, his website, Gideon's Golden Gains. It was a nightmare of flashing text and stolen stock photos of ripped fitness models. Business is booming, he said, cracking open a beer. Moving a ton of units. Units of what looked like bags of green sand piled in the corner. That's amazing, Gid, I said, my voice dripping with fake admiration. How'd you figure all this out? The website, the shipping, it's so professional. He puffed out his chest. He started talking. And talking. He explained everything. How he used a shady fulfillment company. How he bought the proprietary blend of powder in bulk from some unregulated supplier in China. How he'd borrowed Mom's credit card to pay for the initial Facebook ads. You gotta spend money to make money, little brother, he said, as if he'd just revealed the secret of the universe. I nodded, committing every illegal, unethical, and just plain stupid detail to memory. I was an auditor, and my brother was happily giving me a guided tour of his own crime scene. For weeks, this was my life. The dutiful son. The helpful brother. I visited. I listened. I collected. My hard drive at home was filling up with 1,000 tiny pieces of their lives. But it was all small time. Petty cash. Stolen credit cards. False advertising. It was noise. I needed the signal. I needed the one big, ugly secret that could bear the weight of my revenge. I found it on a Tuesday night. I was remotely watching my father's computer screen from my couch. He was browsing golf clubs he couldn't afford. Then he closed the browser. For a moment, the screen was just his desktop, a generic photo of a sunset. Then, he did something he'd never done before. He opened File Explorer and navigated to a folder on his local hard drive, not the company server. A folder named taxstuff_old. My heart started to beat a little faster. Why hide old tax stuff? Inside was another folder. This one was just called M. He clicked on it. Inside was a single PDF. The file name made my blood run cold. Mom_will_final.pdf. My grandmother's will. My father's mother. She had died 5 years ago. A sweet, quiet woman who always slipped me $20 bills and told me I was her quiet thinker. At the time, my father had handled everything. He'd told us her estate was small. That she'd left everything to him, as the eldest, to distribute as he saw fit. He'd given Gideon a check for $15,000 for seed money. He'd given me $500. For your practical nature, he'd said. I'd been grateful. I was so stupid. With a click of my mouse, from a mile away, I opened the PDF on his screen. Then I downloaded a copy to my own computer. My hands were shaking. The document loaded. It was her will. Clearly written, legally notarized. I skimmed it, my eyes racing over the legalese until I found the important part. The disbursement section. Article 4. I give, devise, and bequeath the rest, residue, and remainder of my estate, both real and personal, to my grandchildren, Gideon James Evans and Samuel Robert Evans, in equal shares, share and share alike. In equal shares. 50. 50. I did the math in my head. Her house sold for $250,000. She had about $50,000 in savings. After fees, my share would have been nearly $150,000. He had stolen $149,500 from me. He had lied to me. He had committed fraud. He had looked me in the eye, handed me a pittance, and called me practical while he handed my money to my worthless brother. The room felt airless. The quiet hum of my computer was the only sound. The ice in my chest, the cold purpose I'd felt since my birthday, now had a name. It had a number. $149,500. This wasn't just favoritism. This was a crime. I sat there in the dark, the blue light of the monitor reflecting in my eyes. I wasn't angry. I was focused. The audit was over. The reconnaissance was complete. I had found the cornerstone of their corruption. I opened a new browser tab. I went back to Reddit. To my thread. It had grown. Dozens of people were following the story of the golden child and the clock. I typed a new update. The title was simple. Update, the audit is complete. I found the fraud. The nuclear option is now on the table. I took a long, slow breath. The ghost had found its weapon. It was time to start haunting. Don't miss the next twist, subscribe now. The nuclear option wasn't about pushing a button and watching a mushroom cloud. It was about precision. Surgical strikes. I had to dismantle them in the right order. You don't topple a building by blowing up the penthouse first. You weaken the foundation. You sabotage the supports. And the weakest support, the most rotten beam in the entire structure, was Gideon's empire of dirt, Gideon's golden gains. I started there. Not out of anger, but out of strategy. Taking down his joke of a business would achieve three things. 1. It would humiliate him, chipping away at his golden aura. 2. It would cost my parents money, draining their resources. And 3. It would create chaos, a smokescreen for my next moves. Panicked people make mistakes. I needed them panicked. Sitting in the dark glow of my monitor, I became a ghost in the machine. I opened a new, encrypted email account. The username was nothing, a random string of characters. My first email wasn't angry. It was helpful. Informative. 2. Enforcements at ftc.gov. Subject: Consumer complaint, false advertising and deceptive health claims. The body of the email was dry, factual. I listed the URL for Gideon's website. I copy-pasted his most outlandish claims: melt away stubborn belly fat without diet or exercise. Boost testosterone by 300%. Clinically proven results. There were no clinical proofs. I wrote as a concerned consumer who'd almost been duped. I attached the screenshots I'd taken that night in his basement. I ended it with, I am concerned vulnerable individuals are being scammed out of their money for products that are, at best, ineffective and at worst, dangerous. I hit send. The first domino was tipped. Next, I found the websites of the bodybuilders whose ripped, oiled-up photos Gideon had stolen from Google Images. I found their contact for business inquiries or legal links. Another email, another persona. Subject: Copyright infringement notice. Dear Sir, I wrote. It has come to my attention that your image is being used without license or permission to promote a product called Gideon's Golden Gains. I am not affiliated with this company, but I believe in protecting intellectual property. The website is. I sent it to 3 of them. I knew these guys. Their image was their brand. They'd have lawyers on retainer who loved nothing more than an easy copyright violation case. The final email was to the payment processor he used. This one was the most important. No money, no business. To abuse@paymentprocessor.com. Subject: Violation of Terms of Service Merchant Account, Gideon's Golden Gains. This email was a masterpiece of corporate jargon. I quoted their own terms of service back to them. Section 4.b, Prohibited Items and Services. I pointed out how Gideon's site violated rules on items that make health claims that are not FDA-approved, non-approved supplements, and get-rich-quick schemes. This merchant is operating in clear violation of your stated policies, I wrote, sounding like a bored, meticulous compliance officer. I felt obligated to report it. I sent it. Then, I closed the laptop. The ghost had spoken. All that was left to do was wait and listen. It took 4 days. The call came late in the afternoon. My phone lit up with Gideon's name. I let it ring 3 times, then answered. I made my voice sound groggy, like I'd been napping. Hello? Sam. Dude, it's a disaster. His voice was a shrill panic, the entitled whine of a child whose toy had been broken. Gid? What's wrong? Are you okay? My account. They froze my account. All my money. They're holding it. They said I violated their policy. This is bullshit. I could picture him, pacing in the basement, running his hands through his hair. I felt a cold sliver of satisfaction. Who froze it? The payment guys. I can't access any of my cash. What am I supposed to do? How do I pay for ads? How do I ship orders? I gave him the worst possible advice. I'm sure it's just a mistake, man. Just call them and explain. You're the owner, right? They'll listen to you. He'd never do it. He was terrified of actual authority. He'd just yell and get himself permanently banned. I knew it. Yeah, maybe, he said, not convinced. This is so unfair. The next call came an hour later. My mother. Honey, have you talked to your brother? Her voice was tight, frayed with anxiety. Yeah, Mom, he called. Sounds like some kind of mix-up with his bank. It's not a mix-up, Sam. He's getting letters. From lawyers. Big, scary law firms in New York. They're saying he stole pictures. He could be sued for millions. I made a sympathetic noise. Tisk, wow. That's intense. Maybe he shouldn't have used pictures without asking. But he didn't know, she cried, instantly defending him. He's just a young man trying to start a business. These big companies are so predatory. The mental gymnastics were astounding. I let her vent. I could hear my father yelling in the background. I told him that website was a damn fool idea. The family unit was cracking. The golden child was tarnishing, and his reflectors were getting scorched. The final blow came a week later. An official-looking letter from the Federal Trade Commission arrived at the house, Gideon's business address. My father called me, trying to sound authoritative, but I could hear the tremor in his voice. Sam, this is a damn mess. It's government now. We need to get a lawyer to respond to this. It has to be in writing. He said we. That sounds serious, Dad. It is serious, he snapped, then reined it in. It's a formality, I'm sure. But we have to handle it properly. Your mother she's very upset. I knew what that meant. They were dipping into their savings. The savings that had been mysteriously replenished after my grandmother's death. They were spending my stolen inheritance to clean up Gideon's mess. The beautiful, horrible irony was almost too perfect. Gideon's Golden Gains was shut down. The website was taken offline. The garage was left full of slowly oxidizing green powder. The golden child had failed. Publicly. Expensively. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of something new in my father's eyes when he looked at Gideon. It wasn't admiration. It wasn't pride. It was calculation. Annoyance. The first hairline fracture in the foundation of their world. The ghost's first strike was a complete success. I celebrated alone in my apartment. I didn't have a drink. I didn't cheer. I just sat in the silence, and I allowed myself one single, cold smile. One piece down. Now it was time for the next. It was time for the patriarch of this toxic, inbred family to face his own audit. His sins were older and far more expensive. Gideon was neutralized. A spoiled, flailing child without his allowance. But my father, he was the architect. The one who'd signed the papers. The one who'd looked me in the eye and lied. His sin was colder. More calculated. He didn't just favor Gideon, he'd actively stolen from me. He'd broken the law. His downfall couldn't be a public spectacle like Gideon's. It had to be a slow, creeping dread. A quiet, terrifying realization that the walls he'd built around his perfect little life were not just cracking, they were being dismantled, brick by brick, from the inside. My father's pride was his perceived intelligence, his control. He saw life as a series of transactions, and he always believed he was the smartest guy in the deal. His embezzlement scheme, Project Phoenix, was the ultimate proof of that arrogance. He thought he was cunning. I was about to show him he was just a thief who'd gotten lucky. I went back to the evidence I'd gathered from his computer. The keylogger had captured more emails to Lisa, his partner in crime at the cardboard company. They were careful, but the pattern was clear. They were skimming from a major client's account, padding invoices, and funneling the difference into a separate, off-the-books account they controlled. It was small enough, regular enough, to hopefully avoid notice. My goal wasn't to get him arrested. Not yet. My goal was to make him feel the noose tightening, day by day, without ever seeing who was pulling the rope. I started small. From my anonymous email account, I sent a message to the company's generic info at address. It was vague, designed to sound like corporate gossip. Subject: Project Phoenix Inquiry. Message: Hello, I am a concerned industry analyst. I've been reviewing public filings and noticed some curious discrepancies in the revenue reporting for your major Project Phoenix client account over the last fiscal year. I was hoping someone in leadership could provide clarification before I finalize my report. Thank you. I didn't expect a real response. I just needed the email to exist. To be seen by an intern, forwarded to a manager, and hopefully, to create a single, faint question mark in someone's mind. The next step was more personal. Using the remote access to my father's work computer, I made tiny, almost imperceptible changes. I altered the autosave frequency on his key financial spreadsheets from 10 minutes to 2 minutes. A small thing. But for a man who was lazy about saving his work, it would cause constant, tiny interruptions. It would feel like the system was working against him. I changed his desktop background back to the default Windows wallpaper. When he inevitably changed it back to his sunset photo, I'd change it again a few days later. Little gaslights. Making him doubt his own machine, his own environment. Then, I went for the throat. I had the information for the secret bank account he and Lisa used. I couldn't touch the money, but I could make it look like someone else was looking at it. I signed his work email up for a dozen financial newsletters, investor reports, and, most importantly, a subscription to The Economist. But I didn't have them sent to his work email. I used the password recovery function to change the contact email for the secret bank account to his work address. Then, I signed that bank account up for everything. Suddenly, his pristine, professional work inbox, the inbox of a man who wanted to look indispensable, started getting emails. Your quarterly portfolio summary is ready. Market volatility and your offshore assets. The Economist, special report on Cayman banking. He'd have to delete them, frantic, hoping no one in IT was monitoring his traffic. Every ping of his email would be a shot of adrenaline. I was orchestrating a symphony of anxiety, and he was the only one who could hear it. The effect was better than I could have hoped for. My weekly visits home became a masterclass in watching a man unravel. He was jumpy. His phone was always face down on the table. He'd flinch when an email notification chimed from his office. He started drinking more, his face flushed and his eyes darting around the room. He snapped at my mother over nothing. The confident patriarch was gone, replaced by a paranoid, middle-aged man waiting for the sky to fall. "Everything okay, Dad?" I asked one night, while helping him with a printer issue. "You seem stressed." He ran a hand over his face. "It's work." "It's nothing. Just idiots. New corporate policies. Bunch of nonsense." He couldn't look me in the eye. The best part? He was so consumed by his own impending doom that he had no patience left for Gideon. The golden child, now a broke, failed entrepreneur, tried to complain about the unfair FTC letters over dinner. My father didn't offer to fix it. He didn't assure him. He just looked up from his plate, his eyes hollow, and said, "For God's sake, Gideon, figure it out yourself. I've got my own problems." The table went silent. Gideon looked like he'd been slapped. My mother stared, her mouth a small O of shock. The hierarchy, the unshakable law of their world, had just been violated. The golden child had been put in his place. It was a beautiful sound. The sound of a structure groaning under its own weight. The final push came from an unexpected place, my mother. With my father distant and irritable and Gideon sulking, her perfect world was fraying. She started snooping. She found the hidden credit card statements she'd been hiding from him. But she also started looking for what he might be hiding from her. And she found the emails from the bank. The portfolio summaries. The Cayman Island reports. The fight was epic. I heard it all through the phone when she called me, sobbing. "He has a secret account, Sam. He's hiding money. After all I've done for him. After all we've spent on Gideon's lawyers. He's got money stashed away." I made comforting noises. "I'm sure it's a mistake, Mom. Maybe it's a work thing." "It's not a work thing. It has his name on it." The architect's foundation was not just cracked, it was washed away. His wife saw him as a liar. His son saw him as a failure. His job was a minefield of his own making. He was completely, utterly alone. I sat back in my chair. The second piece of the family was shattered. His reputation, his authority, his marriage, all were in ruins, and he never saw me coming. The ghost had whispered in the right ears, pressed the right keys, and watched the dominoes fall. All that was left was the final piece. The one who started it all. The enabler. The keeper of the myth. My mother. And for her, I had saved the most personal, the most devastating revelation of all. The one that would prove her perfect golden world was built on a lie she helped create. But first, I had to go back to the beginning. I had to go back to the will. My mother was the keeper of the myth. She wasn't just an enabler, she was the curator of the museum dedicated to Gideon. She polished the trophies, updated the exhibits, and gave the tours. My father's sin was legal. Hers was emotional. It was deeper. It was the original wound. Taking her down wouldn't involve anonymous emails or corporate sabotage. Hers had to be a personal demolition. I had to make her see the rot in the foundation she'd so carefully built her life upon. I had to use her own hands to tear it down. I had the weapon. The will. The proof of the theft. But simply showing it to her would let her play the victim. I didn't know. Your father handled all of that. She'd retreat into willful ignorance, her favorite hiding place. No. I had to lead her to it. I had to make her discover the truth herself, so she could never unsee it, so the responsibility would be hers alone. It started with a memory. A specific, curated memory. I called her on a Tuesday afternoon. I made my voice soft, nostalgic. Hey, Mom. Sam. Honey, how are you? She sounded tired. The fights with my dad were taking their toll. The perfect family facade was crumbling, and she was the one frantically trying to glue it back together. I'm okay. I was just, I don't know, thinking about Grandma today. I really miss her. A pause. I could almost hear her shifting gears, trying to figure out my angle. Oh. That's sweet, honey. She loved you boys very much. She did, I said, laying the trap with gentle words. I was thinking about that time she taught me how to make her peanut butter cookies. Remember? In her kitchen. That old yellow mixing bowl. I remember, she said, her voice warming slightly. A safe memory. A domestic one. It just made me think she was always so fair. So practical. Remember how she'd always make sure to give Gideon and me the exact same amount of candy? To the piece? Another pause, shorter this time. I was guiding her toward the cliff. Yes. She was very precise. It's just funny, isn't it? I said, my tone light, innocent. That with her own will, she'd leave everything to Dad to just hand out however he wanted. That doesn't sound like her. She was always so big on things being even-steven. Remember her saying that? The silence on the other end of the line was different now. It was thoughtful. Wary. I'd planted the seed of doubt. A tiny, nagging question about her mother-in-law's final wishes that didn't align with the woman she knew. Well, your father was the eldest. It was a different time, she said, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. She was trying to convince herself. Yeah, I guess, I said, feigning acceptance. Anyway, just made me think of you. Love you, Mom. Love you too, honey. I hung up. The seed was planted. Don't miss the next twist, subscribe now. Phase 2 was to water it. A few days later, during another visit, I found her alone in the kitchen, looking through old photo albums. Perfect. Looking at memories, Mom? Oh, just feeling sentimental, she said, wiping a tear from her eye. The stress was making her emotional. Vulnerable. I sat beside her. We flipped through pages of Gideon's first steps, Gideon's first haircut, Gideon's first everything. I waited for a photo of my grandmother. There she was, holding a baby Gideon, beaming. She was so proud to be a grandma, my mother said. She was, I agreed. Then, casually, as if it had just occurred to me, you know, it's a shame we don't have a copy of her will. Not for the money, I added quickly, just, it's a part of her history, you know? Her final words. It'd be nice to have, like a family document. I could scan it and frame it or something. I presented it as a gesture of familial piety. Honoring Grandma. She nodded slowly. That's a lovely idea, Sam. I'm not sure where your father keeps all that. Probably in his office, I said, helpfully. In that big filing cabinet. I could look for you sometime, if you want. Help you organize it. Her eyes flickered towards my father's office door. It was closed. He'd been spending more and more time in there, locked away with his stress and his secret emails. A space that was becoming off-limits. My suggestion wasn't about help. It was about rebellion. About her taking control of a piece of the family history he had locked away. No, she said, a new steel in her voice. I'll find it. The next day, she called me. Her voice was shaking, but it wasn't with sadness. It was with a cold, quiet fury. Sam. Mom? What's wrong? I found it. The words were ice chips. I found Grandma's will. She'd waited until my father was at work. She'd gone into his office, into the locked filing cabinet, she'd found the key hidden under his desk blotter. And she'd found the folder labeled M. It says, her voice broke. She took a sharp breath. It says the estate was to be split evenly. Between you and Gideon. Evenly, Sam. I stayed silent. Let her sit with it. He lied to me, she whispered, and the sound was full of a devastating betrayal. He looked me in the eye and he told me she left it all to him. He let me believe it. He let me agree to give Gideon that money. He let me believe that was what she wanted. And then came the question I had been waiting for. The question that would seal her complicity in her own mind. Sam, did you know? This was the critical moment. I couldn't say yes. I couldn't say no. I had to make it her truth. Mom, I said, my voice barely audible, layered with a pain I didn't have to fake. What are you talking about? She read me the clause over the phone, her voice trembling. Article 4, in equal shares. I have it right in front of me. I let the silence hang. I let her hear my ragged breath. When I spoke again, my voice was cracked, broken. The betrayed son. He gave me $500, I said, the words a choked whisper. He told me it was for being practical. I let the line go dead for a beat. You were there. You handed me the check. The silence on her end was absolute. I had just reframed her entire reality. She wasn't just the victim of my father's lie. She was an accomplice. She had handed me the check. She had smiled. She had endorsed the theft with her silence, with her compliance. I heard a small, choked sob. Then the phone went dead. She had discovered the truth herself. She had held the evidence in her hands. And in doing so, she had condemned herself. The keeper of the myth had found out the myth was a lie. And she had helped build it. The fallout was immediate and total. She confronted my father. It wasn't a fight, it was an execution. She didn't yell. She was cold, calm, and presented the evidence. He spluttered, he deflected, he tried to blame it on tax implications and what was best for the family. But the curtain had been pulled back. She saw him for the small, fraudulent man he was. The perfect family unit, the toxic, inbred system that revolved around her golden child, was exposed as a sham built on a crime she had unknowingly sanctioned. She didn't speak to him for days. She moved into the guest room. The curator had closed the museum. Permanently. I sat in my apartment, the silence more profound than ever. The three pillars of that family, the golden child, the arrogant father, the enabling mother, were all broken, isolated from each other, drowning in their own private hells of failure, paranoia, and guilt. The ghost had haunted them until they turned on each other. My work was almost done. There was only one thing left to do. To present the bill for 30 years of neglect. For the stolen inheritance. For the broken clock. It was time to send the letter. The letter. It wasn't written in anger. Anger is hot, messy, impulsive. This was the opposite. It was the final report of my audit. The summation of my findings. It was cold, clinical, and utterly, devastatingly precise. I drafted it a dozen times. Each word was chosen for its weight, its meaning, its ability to inflict maximum damage with zero emotion. I printed it on crisp, white paper. It looked like a legal document. In a way, it was. I attached the evidence. Not all of it. Just the key pieces. A copy of the will. The bank statements showing the deposit of my grandmother's estate and the subsequent, unequal disbursements. A spreadsheet I'd created, breaking down the numbers with chilling clarity. Principal. Interest. The total owed. I didn't threaten. I didn't plead. I stated facts. The opening line was, "This letter serves as formal notification of your breach of fiduciary duty and felony probate fraud in the matter of the estate of Eleanor Evans." I outlined it all. Step by step. How he'd lied. How he'd stolen. How he'd perjured himself in court documents. I cited statute numbers. I used words like conversion and unjust enrichment. Then, I delivered the terms. They had 30 days. 30 days to liquidate assets and deliver a cashier's check for the full amount, plus calculated interest, to a lawyer I had retained, a cold, efficient woman I'd found online who specialized in dispute resolution. I gave them her address. And then, the masterstroke. The final paragraph that wasn't a threat, but a promise. Failure to remit payment in full within the allotted time will result in this complete evidence package being filed with the probate court to reopen the estate, submitted to the Internal Revenue Service for review of tax evasion, and provided to the State Bar Association for investigation of perjury and fraud. There will be no further communication. I signed it, not with love, not with anger, but with my full name. Samuel Robert Evans. The ghost had a name. And now they knew it. I didn't send it from my city. I drove 2 hours to a town I'd never been to. I bought stamps from a machine. I dropped the thick, white envelope into a mailbox outside a post office. No return address. Just their address, written in neat, anonymous block letters. The trap was sprung. The clock was ticking. And I removed myself completely. I told my boss I was taking a week of vacation. I packed a bag. I got in my car and I started driving. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I needed to be gone. I needed silence. I needed to be unreachable when it landed. I was in a motel in the middle of nowhere, watching the rain streak down the window, when the 30 days were up. I turned my phone on for the first time in a week. It was like detonating a bomb in my hand. The screen exploded. Dozens of missed calls. Voicemails stacked up like bodies. Text messages, pleading, raging, desperate, scrolling on and on. I didn't read them. I went straight to the voicemails. I plugged in my headphones. I leaned back against the cheap motel headboard. And I listened. This was the soundtrack to my victory. The first was from my mother. Sobbing, hysterical. "Sam, oh God, Sam, the letter, we got the letter, how could you do this to us? To your family? We're your family. Please, call me, we can talk about this." Delete. The next was my father. 30 seconds of sputtering, incoherent rage before the system cut him off. Unbelievable. After everything I've done for you. You little shit. This is extortion. I'll see you in hell before I give you a goddamn. Delete. Another from my mother, colder now. The tears were gone, replaced by a bitter fury. He showed me the letter. "How long have you been planning this? Spying on us? You're sick. You're a sick, twisted." Delete. Gideon. His voice was a high-pitched wail of pure panic. "Dude. What the fuck? Mom and Dad are losing it. They're talking about taking a loan against the house. My house. You can't do this. This is my house." Delete. I listened to them all. Every single one. The anger. The denial. The bargaining. The threats. The devastating, beautiful sound of their perfect world shattering into a million pieces. They were drowning, and they were looking for a life raft, but I had burned all the boats. I didn't feel joy. I felt a profound, immense silence. The scream that had lived in my chest for 30 years was gone. Expelled. It was in their voices now. On the 29th day, an email arrived from my lawyer. It was one line. Package received. Funds secured. Attached was a scanned image of a cashier's check. Made out to me. For the full amount. Every penny they had stolen, plus interest. They had paid. They had chosen to save their own skins. They had mortgaged Gideon's future, the very thing they'd claimed to protect, to avoid prison. I never cashed it. I had it framed. It hangs on my wall now, in the home I bought for myself. A beautiful, quiet house with no ghosts in it. The check is my trophy. It's not about the money. It's about the choice. It's the proof of their moral bankruptcy, worth far more than its monetary value. The aftermath was everything I'd wanted. My father was fired from his job when the embezzlement investigation concluded. He and Lisa are facing federal charges. My parents, drowning in debt from the second mortgage and legal fees, had to sell the house anyway. They moved into a sad, beige apartment. The golden grandfather clock didn't fit. They sold it at a garage sale for $50. Gideon? Without his bankrollers, his shield, his shrine, he completely fell apart. He blamed our parents for everything. There was a huge, final, explosive fight. He moved out, and from what I hear, he's drifting from one get-rich-quick scheme to another, a permanent victim, still waiting for the world to hand him everything he deserves. The toxic, inbred family system was utterly destroyed. The closed loop was broken. They don't speak to each other anymore. I never spoke to any of them again. The last thing I did was send one final email to all three of them. It was short. I have what was always mine. You have what you always deserved. Do not contact me again. And they haven't. Sometimes, in the quiet of my own home, I think about them. I don't feel hate anymore. I feel nothing. And for someone who spent 30 years feeling too much, that nothingness is the most peaceful feeling in the world. My revenge wasn't about getting even. It was about getting free. I didn't just destroy my toxic family. I used the wreckage to build myself a new foundation. A stronger one. The golden child took it all. So I took it all back. And then I took their world, and I crushed it in my hand until there was nothing left but dust. And I finally, got to walk away. Don't miss the next twist, subscribe now.